are Kirk Cousins. It's going to be the biggest free agent signing this offseason. It's going to be one of the biggest free agent signings of all time. Kirk Cousins is the highest paid player in the NFL. Kirk Cousins is going to go from the Washington Redskins to a contender. Usually, when you're signed as the biggest player in free agency, usually when you're signed as a player that's a revolution of the team that you're going to, is a player that's going to make a ginormous impact in free agency. Usually, it's not to a team that played in the NFC Championship. That's usually not the way it goes. But Kirk Cousins, he could decide between a few teams. The Cardinals were there. The Jets were there. The Broncos hung around for a while. But the Minnesota Vikings is going to be the destination for Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins will likely sign a 3-year contract with the Vikings. That includes roughly $86 million guaranteed. All the money is guaranteed. It is a 3-year contract, and that had a lot to do with it. Kirk Cousins is going to be sort of a guy that in the NFL set some standards for franchise quarterbacks, for franchise players, with the way that he went about and used the franchise tag in those last couple of years with the Redskins, the way that he maneuvered himself into a good situation in free agency, and then took all guaranteed money and bet on himself to get the best contracts possible. Dylan, what's your thoughts on Kirk Cousins going to the Vikings? And anything else regarding the contract or the situation with Cousins?
Well, I always thought that Kirk Cousins was the best quarterback choice coming in. If they had the opportunity to get him, why not get him? I know you're going to have to throw some bones out there, but $86 million, that's all guaranteed. I think that was the big reason as to why he picked the Minnesota Vikings over everybody, because that's pretty much all guaranteed money. If he had went to any of these other destinations, he would have had the misfortune of playing the waiting game again, which I think he wasn't wanting to do after being in Washington for so long and being like, oh, we can kind of do this or we can kind of do that. I don't think he wanted to be in that situation. So I think his two biggest things in terms of signing with a team where I need somebody that can win and I need somebody that will give me at least good money to play there. And the Minnesota Vikings were willing to do both. This team just went to the NFC Championship game, as we were talking about, so that's pretty crazy. Next one in the offseason, signing with a team that just went to the top 4 in their conference, or actually top 2 in their conference. So it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings play with this. And we talked about whether or not some of their biggest defensive players will leave after next season. But I think it wasn't. I think it's actually pretty good money, all things considered. It wasn't in the $100 millions, which is what I was expecting. And
it's only 3 years, so
yeah. I mean, and then you could sign into a bigger contract. Maybe they were just wanting to keep some of their players protected for the defense.
I think the interesting thing about this deal, because this is the deal that's going to be broken down for the next few years, all offseason, all year long, general managers are going to be looking at how Kirk Cousins maneuvered the field to get what he wanted. And I think this is going to be a major deal, not only for Kirk Cousins and his significance as a Viking, but on the entire landscape of the NFL. It's going to impact the future of free agency because you have this deal that's fully guaranteed. That's something that's extremely rare. That barely ever, if not ever, happens in the NFL. It's a regular thing in places like the NBA, but in the NFL, it's something that it's a sport and that changes at an instant. Injuries, we've seen so many busts in terms of signings and draft picks that it's something that doesn't really happen. And I think with Kirk Cousins, not only is he a guy that I think is going to come in and have a lot of success with Minnesota, but I think he's going to entirely change the landscape of free agency. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this signing impacts next year's free agency, the re-signings throughout the year for big players like Le'Veon Bell, OBJ, future quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan that need to be signed. And I just think it's going to be very interesting. Now, when we go to the and you said it's not in the $100 million. I think it's because it's only 3 years. Like he's still making what, 28 million a year?
28, 29.
28 something million a year. So he's getting overpaid. Like there's no doubt about it, but you're going to have to overpay in free agency. We say that all the time. And for the Vikings, their decision was, okay, are they going to get Kirk Cousins, or are they willing to sacrifice 2 or 3 defensive players next year because they have a lot of players coming up in contract? Obviously, they felt that Kirk Cousins was more important and that franchise quarterback that they haven't had for quite some time outside of 1 year with Brett Favre when he was 40, that they really had where they had a franchise QB, and they haven't had one since forever. I mean, Dante Culpepper for a short period of time may have been considered that, but and Cunningham for 1 year, but like really Fran Tarkington is the last time you really had a consistent franchise quarterback. That's not even a joke. So Kirk Cousins could end up being, the second greatest Viking quarterback of all time if he has success there. And we know how the Vikings are built. They're built for a window. They're built for now. They're built to go to the Super Bowl in these next couple of years. And I think that's what the Vikings thought. They need this quarterback now so that they can maximize their window this year, next year, and the year after that. And we'll see what they do after that point with Kirk Cousins and how successful it goes. I've always been a big fan of Kirk Cousins. There's been naysayers of Kirk Cousins. There's been people that don't like him very much. There's been people that love Kirk Cousins. I like Kirk Cousins not only because he's a good football player, but because of what he is off the field. He's an extremely good leader, and he got himself to this point as a football player because of his hard work, because of his determination, because of his film study. When you listen to the guy, he's extremely intelligent. When he talks about football, he has an extreme passion for it. So I think that the Vikings got their quarterback. I think this is going to be a huge move for their franchise moving forward, and he's going to be their face of their franchise. And I think this is just going to be, a wonderful move for Vikings fans, the Viking franchise, and for Kirk Cousins. The Cousins fits Minnesota well. Everything about it, I think, screams it's going to be great. So, Dylan, any final thoughts on Kirk Cousins before we move on?
You like that. That's all I got to say. I think the Vikings, I think they're going to like it for a lot. They've got a great combination of receivers. I think Diggs and Thielen are going to be all over the place next season. And I think the Vikings fans should be elated by this because you said, they've had to deal with seasons of Tavares Jackson as their QB. So anywhere is a step up from there. So
and he's extremely better than Case Keenum.
Yes.
So, and Case Keenum's not bad. I'm just saying he's a better quarterback and an upgrade. So that's Kirk Cousins, our thoughts on the Kirk Cousins signing.
I want to pause you real quick as we go into the next one. There is the contract for